Okay. We will start with endocrine system today. Introduction. Little aside. Uh, so endocrine system, is it audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So we know we have seen the central nervous system which was regulating your functions, your body functions or other physiological activities, different nuclei or different clusters of neurons or nerves which had a role in the role in regulating different functions. Here another system, endocrine system again, which has got role in regulations of body metabolic activities or body activities, physiological activities. And these two systems actually combine or join together, or they work together to control or to maintain the homeostasis of the physiological functions or the normal body functions, daily functions. Okay, endocrine and nervous system, neuroendocrine regulation. Actually, it is a neuroendocrine combined regulation with of this CNS and endocrine system throughout the body functions, throughout the body. You are normal. You see, people say that person we are normal or I am normal because our endocrine system works normal. Our hormones, like we need only like very small quantity of hormones for daily functions, so that should be in that particular range. Increase or decrease, alters or totally like turns upside, it turns upside down, okay, your total body activities. So to regulate the hormones level or actions in that narrow range is very important. Okay, so that is a combined action done by the nervous system and endocrine system, and these two systems, they regulate the functions. Like neurons or nervous system, they act by impulses, nerve impulses. Okay, nerve impulses by altering the membrane potentials. Okay, membrane potentials, but that is very rapid, very fast, but for a short period. Okay, very fast and short period. Hormones or endocrine regulation means they secrete chemicals, physiologically active chemicals into the bloodstream. Okay, into the blood, and while passing through the blood, they reaches their target organs or target cells. There they act. So there is a latent period. The release of the hormone travel through the blood and reaching and acting. There is a latent period always, but the effect is little long lasting than the nervous control. Okay, so most of the long term regulations are done by hormonal regulations, and short term or life saving regulations are done by neural regulations. Okay, so that chemicals which is secreted by some of the secretory cells into the blood for the regulation of the body activities are called as hormones. Okay, so it is a type of chemical or chemical messenger secreted by endocrine glands. Okay, and that is secreted directly into the blood and is transported to specific target by combining with transporters. Okay, there are certain transporters in the target. One second. Okay, so it's secreted where it elicits these these hormones or these chemicals, they reach the target cell by flowing through the blood columns or that uh, blood flow. Okay, and then they reach the target cell where they have some specific type of receptor. For the peculiarity, the hormones, not like other chemicals, they have specific target cells. They bind on to the target cells, and then they elicit the physiological and biochemical responses. Now we'll see the major endocrine glands. For males and females we have to say separately because there is the reproductive hormones are secreted by two different organs. Okay, for the males obviously by the testes, and for females the ovarian hormones. Okay, so we'll start from the top, there are pituitary glands, pineal gland, and hypothalamus also secretes hormones. Okay, inhibiting and what you call releasing hormones. And we have thyroid glands, and after that we have pancreatic islets of Langerhans. Pancreas is a mixed gland. You have learned the pancreatic juice in the digestive system. Okay, so we have pancreatic. We have another classes of cells called as pancreatic islets of Langerhans, which secrete beta, which secrete insulin and glucagon. Okay, so the endocrine portion of pancreas, adrenal gland. Adrenal gland, we have adrenal medulla and adrenal cortex. And adrenal medulla, I have learned in ANS. It is a modified ganglia which is situated outside. Okay, and we have ovarian hormones and the male hormones, male reproductive hormones secreted by the testes. And now we'll see there are some other organs or cells with endocrine functions, or that means they secrete some chemicals which resembles the endocrine hormones, because they are secreted into the blood and travel through the blood and act on other cells which is away from the origin of their secretion. So in the heart cells secrete substances, chemical called as atrial natriuretic peptide, ANP. Kidneys, they secrete 125 dihydrocholecalciferol, the active form of the calcium, and erythropoietin and renin. All these are secreted by kidneys. Or these you have seen erythropoietin is acting on the bone marrow to stimulate the what do you call erythropoiesis, the production of RBCs. And renin you have seen it's a role in renin angiotensin mechanisms in blood pressure regulation. And liver cell secretes somatomedin. This you will learn soon, which has an important role in the action of growth hormone. Okay, this is a mediator for the growth hormone action, somatomedin. And then hydrocholecalciferol. Then skin secretes, that is, it is a formation, calciferol. Okay, vitamin D, active form of vitamin D. Then GI tract, gastrin secretin, VIP, all these are called as actually GI hormones. Okay, and then chemical messengers. There are different classes. We are going to study endocrine hormones. So other classes, I'll just give an hint or give an idea what are the other classes in chemical messengers. So endocrine, you can see what are the differences among them. So endocrine, these endocrine cells or the signaling cells, they secrete a chemical. That chemical diffuses into the blood circulation, and blood circulation helps them to reach to their target cells. Okay, which is away from the origin of their secretion. So this target cell, with the help of the receptor cells, they bind on the receptor cell on the target cell. They utilize the chemical and make changes or do the performance. So it is called as hormones. Okay, endocrine hormones. This is endocrine hormones. And we have paracrine hormones. So these paracrine signaling cells, they release the chemical. They enter into the interstitial fluid. Okay, here they entered into the blood, but here they enter into the interstitial fluid and reaches the target cell. This is closer. The target cell will be closer to the signaling cells. Okay, and then sometimes this target cell and signaling cell will have a connection by the what do you call cell junctions, by the cell junctions or tight junctions. So there won't be entry of these chemical into the interstitial fluid. They directly enter into the target cell. Okay, by connection by tight junctions or any cell junctions, any type of cell junctions. And another class is autocrine hormones or autocrine signaling. In that, the signaling cell and target cell is same. Okay, the signaling cell secrete a substance, chemical, enters into the interstitial fluid and then enters back into the target cell, the same. The signaling cell and target cell is same. One second. Excuse me. And then another is neuroendocrine signaling. Neuroendocrine signaling is like neurons. You have seen the transmission by nerve signals by the release of neurotransmitters. You have seen a number of examples like acetylcholine, glutamate, etc. So there is release of neurotransmitters. So the release signal transmission by release of neurotransmitters is called as neurocrine signaling. So different chemical messengers or signalings are there. Endocrine signaling, what we are going to study next as a next topic, like endocrine glands or cells, they secrete their secretion into the blood vessel and then to the target cell. Paracrine signaling, it is either directly connected with the help of cell junction or they secrete to the interstitial fluid and then to the adjacent target cell. It is example you can see in the intestinal cells. Okay, see the stomach cells secrete and act in the stomach cells, neighboring cells like intestine or in the pancreas, etc. Or autocrine cells, they act, this signaling and target cell are same. Neurocrine means neurotransmitters are the chemicals which act as the signals, okay, or which communicate. The communication is by neurotransmitters. And we'll see the characteristics of endocrine hormones now, or how they are or why they are called as endocrine hormones. So in this, we need only very low level of hormones in plasma, a low concentration in the plasma for hormones. And for there is a latent period for the action of hormone, and that will be usually long, because I told that the signaling cell and target cell, the distance is bit long. So the action is also long, okay. And circulation in plasma is with the help of binding proteins. So enter into the circulation to carry them through the blood circulation. They need a binding protein, okay. These hormones, they bind with a specific type of protein, and that proteins carry them through the blood circulation. And very few of them, they can pass through the capillaries in an unbound form, not all, and interact with their target cells via receptors. And there is another important, they do not interact with the target cell directly, okay. Directly enter into the target cell and make some modifications. The function of a hormone means the changes made by that hormone, okay. So that is not directly they are inserting some changes. They need a receptor, and the receptor mediated changes are happening. And the endocrine hormones are metabolized very quickly, and they do not create any new functions, or they do not make the cell to do any new function, okay. They just regulate the existing function. The cells will have a certain type of function. These hormones, these endocrine hormones, just modify it. They might speed it up or slower down it, okay. Just regulate the fundamental bodily process. The hormones are not creating any new body functions, okay, or they do not initiate any cellular reactions. And finally, these interactions at target cells are in three ways. There are three ways. So I told they interact with their target cells via receptors. The interactions are in three ways. One is synergistic actions, okay. One or more than two hormones which have similar functions, they act together. Like, except your insulin hormone, most of the other hormones are hyperglycemic hormones, okay. Your thyroid hormones, your growth hormones, and glucagon, these three are hyperglycemic hormones, okay. Means they increase the blood sugar level, plasma sugar level. So these three act together. They are three hormones, they act together to produce a greater response, okay. This glucagon itself can act, growth hormone itself can have a hyperglycemic action, or thyroid itself can have a hyperglycemic action. But if these three act together, the production, the response will be greater. And the permissiveness, this means your reproductive hormones can act on your gonads normally. Okay, but the effect is not that great. But the thyroid hormones cannot act on your reproductive organs for a reproductive function, right? But in presence of thyroid hormone, the sex hormones can have a full exerted effect on the reproductive organs. Okay, fully exerted effect on the reproductive organs by the reproductive hormones is done if there is a smaller quantity presence of the uh, thyroid hormones. That is called as permissiveness. A presence of a smaller quantity increases or causes the full exertion of the of another hormone. Okay, so that is called as permissiveness. A small quantity is required, but if not required, if not present also, they will act, but action will not be in that full-fledged form. Okay, and antagonism means if the two hormones have opposite effects on same function. Okay, functionally antagonism. Examples are insulin and glucagon. They have antagonistic effect on the same function. That means regulation of the blood sugar. The regulation of blood sugar is the function. And here glucagon increases the blood sugar while insulin decreases the blood sugar. But they act together to bring about the regulation, normal, or to keep the normal range of blood glucose level in the blood. So these are the characteristics of hormone. They act in different ways. Okay. Now we'll see chemistry. There are different types of hormone based on their chemistry. Okay. There are steroid hormones, there are protein and polypeptide hormones, and there are amino acid derivatives of derivatives. Okay. So steroid hormones, they are hydrophobic, lipid soluble, and they are not stored. These steroid hormones are not stored. They are synthesized whenever, means uh, the quantity daily requirement is synthesized. They are not synthesized in a larger amount and kept. They bound to transport proteins and they synthesized in cytoplasm or inside mitochondria. So the examples of steroid hormones are just check the names. Okay, estrogen, progesterone, corticosteroids. All these stero names will be there. Adrenocortical hormones. Adrenocortical hormones, you can see glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids. Okay, and male and female sex hormones. These are the examples for steroids. And proteins and polypeptides, they are water soluble. They are stored in zymogen granules. They circulate in unbound in plasma. Okay, so I told in the beginning, few uh, can cross the capillary in an unbound form. So these are examples, proteins and polypeptides. So they're synthesized in ribosomes. So pituitary hormones, hypothalamic hormones, parathyroid, calcitonin, insulin, and glucagon. All these are the protein hormones. Okay, and some of these protein hormones can circulate in unbound form. And then amino acid derivatives, you can see tyronin. Okay, tyrosine hormone, the thyroid hormones. Okay, thyroid hormone T3, T4, epinephrine and norepinephrine of adrenal medulla. These are the amino acid derived forms. Okay, so three classes are there based upon the chemistry: steroid, protein and polypeptide, and amino acid. But we will not study under these headings. Okay, we will study under each endocrine glands. Endocrine glands and the hormones secreted by those endocrine glands. And while studying each endocrine or hormones, we just mention what classes are there. Are they steroid, are they protein derivative, or amino acid derivative? Okay. And control of endocrine gland or regulation, we have three types of regulation: nervous control, direct control, positive and negative feedback. Positive and negative feedback, you have seen in that homeostatic regulation. Whenever increase of a hormone in the blood occurs, that causes an inhibition of the that inhibition on the anterior or posterior anterior pituitary for stopping the releasing hormones. Most of the endocrine glands are regulated by the anterior pituitary releasing or inhibiting hormones, which is controlled by the hypothalamus. So this positive and negative feedback means, first we'll discuss about negative. Negative means if the hormone level is increased in the plasma, okay, that high level of hormone in the plasma is detected by the receptors. They send signals to the hypothalamus to secrete inhibiting hormones to the anterior pituitary, and anterior pituitary secrete inhibiting hormones, then inhibit the endocrine gland. And positive feedback means, example is oxytocin. Okay, increasing level of hormones in the plasma or in the blood causes stimulation of the posterior pituitary of the pituitary or hypothalamus and pituitary gland for secretion of more hormone like oxytocin. Oxytocin is required in larger amount, so more and more the presence causes stimulation of posterior pituitary to secrete more oxytocin, which causes more contraction of uterus and parturition. Okay, so if the stimulus enhances the secretion of or enhances the stimulus, okay, that is called as positive. And if the stimulus causes inhibition of the stimulus, if the stimulus leads to a response which inhibits the stimulus, that is called as negative response. Okay, and direct control means some endocrine gland, they are directly regulated by the hormone itself. That means suppose sometimes the which is thyroid gland has got a direct control, auto regulation. Okay, the hormones directly inhibit or excite or stimulate the gland to secrete or inhibit the, or means excite or inhibit the secretion of hormone. Direct control, not going to the hypothalamus or going to the anterior pituitary posterior pituitary to regulate. Anterior pituitary, not posterior pituitary. It's a different hormone. Nervous control through hypothalamus here. So it is like direct innervation via ANS. You have seen like autonomic innervation, parasympathetic innervation. Most of the glands got parasympathetic innervation. And neurosecretory neurons, control of the posterior pituitary. Like this is direct control. This is an example. This is seen in posterior pituitary only, because direct control by the hypothalamus, because in posterior pituitary the hormones are produced inside the hypothalamus, and then it is transported to the posterior pituitary for the storage, and then posterior pituitary it secretes it whenever it is necessary. And neurosecretory neuron control for the anterior pituitary. This is the hypothalamus secretes inhibiting and excitatory, inhibiting and releasing. Okay, inhibiting and releasing hormones, inhibitory and releasing hormones to the uh, anterior pituitary. And in the anterior pituitary you can see stimulatory hormones like TSH, thyroid stimulating hormones, etc. Okay, thyroid stimulating hormones, TSH, or adrenocorticotropic stimulating hormone, etc. So neurosecretory hormones, control of anterior. These are the nervous control through hypothalamus. Okay, so the hormones can be regulated by positive, negative feedback by by seeing the levels of hormones in the plasma. Okay, reinforcing effect and inhibiting effect. Direct control means auto-regulation of the glands itself. Nervous regulation by hypothalamus, by ANS, and by neurosecretory control of anterior pituitary. Okay. And now hormone receptors. And this is very important, hormone receptors. Hormone receptors are large proteins present in the target cells, and each cell has thousands of receptors, and these receptors has up regulation and down regulation. That will come in the next slides. And receptors are highly specific for one single hormone. Suppose thyroid receptors cannot receive posterior pituitary hormones. They receive only thyroid hormones. That too, T3, T4 has again different types of receptors. Okay, so they are specific. They are large proteins present on the target cells. The locations are different. In the next session, we'll see that. And they have many receptors, not only one receptor, thousands of receptors. A number of receptors are modulated by upregulation and downregulation. And this location is also very important. Okay, so they told target receptors, target cells has receptors. So the receptors are sometimes present on the outer, the cell membrane, on the plasma membrane itself, outside. Okay. So for protein, hormones, and catecholamines, epinephrine and norepinephrine, the receptors are present on the cell membrane. Okay. And for the steroid hormones, for all the steroid hormones, the sex hormones, for reproductive hormones, and for the adrenal cortical hormones, the receptors are present inside the cytoplasm. So they can cross the cell membrane. So these hormones, steroid hormones, can cross the cell membrane and reach the cytoplasm, enter into the cytoplasm. They can bind with the receptor. Okay, their particular receptors. And another class is thyroid hormones. They don't have receptors on the cell membrane or either on the cytoplasm. They have receptor on the nucleus. So the thyroid hormones can cross the cell membrane, they reach the cytoplasm, and they can find the receptor on the nucleus. So three types of receptors are present. Cellular receptors, which is present on the cell membrane, plasma membrane receptors present on the cell membrane, cytoplasmic receptors, which is present on the cytoplasm, and nuclear receptors, which is present on the nucleus. That is for three different classes of hormones also. Okay. And see, this is down regulation and up regulation of the hormone receptors. So it is like sensitivity. Okay. It is for the super sensitivity. So down regulation means when a hormone is in excess. Okay. See, suppose hormone is abundant. There is only two receptors present here. The hormone is abundant. The number of hormone decreases. Okay, this one down regulation. You see here, down regulation. So here you see many receptors are present, and the hormone is also abundant. They decrease the number of receptors. So this is called as down regulation. Okay. And up regulation, so because you know the body knows enough amount of hormone is available. Okay, so to avoid that hypersensitivity. Okay, so decreases the number of receptors. And up regulation means during deficiency of hormone. Okay, during deficiency of hormone, hormone level is very less. So if the receptor level is also, number of receptors is also very less, the complete utilization of hormone will not happen. So to utilize completely the available hormone cell or hormone, the chemical, they increases the number of receptors. Say for complete utilization or for increases sensitivity towards the hormone, it increases the number of hormone receptors here. So that is called as up regulation. Okay, down regulation and up regulation, to use the complete or to make use of the complete hormone, the hormone, available hormone in its full-fledged form. Okay, up and down regulations. And mechanism of hormonal activity, the two types of mechanisms are there: cyclic AMP mediated hormone activity for the water soluble hormones, and gene manipulation or modification, gene manipulation by lipid soluble hormones. Because lipid soluble hormones, the receptors, thyroid and hormones, hormones and steroid hormones, you can see the receptors are inside the cell. Okay, thyroid hormone on the nucleus, steroid hormone in the cytoplasm. Okay, so they can cross the lipid bilayers. They can cross the lipid bilayer because they are lipid soluble. So they can reach inside the cell. So their mode of action is transcription and translation effects or gene manipulation. And for those water soluble hormones, they cannot cross the lipid bilayer. Okay, So they bind on their receptors are present on the plasma membrane. So they have to bind on the plasma membrane to make their activity. So that is called as cyclic AMP mediated hormone activity, a peptide and protein hormones. Okay, because their receptors are present on the cell membrane. 3 minutes left. I think we'll just see here. Okay, mechanism of hormone action. See here. First, I'll see this one. A gland secretes. This is like cyclic AMP mediated hormone activity. See, this gland secretes hormone. Hormone binds with this. What do you call? Mm, in the blood. Okay, in the blood they travel. So this is the first messenger. It binds. This is the cell, target cell. They travel via the blood and reaches on the target cell. Suppose this is the target cell. The black one is the target cell. They bind with the receptor. See, the receptor is present on the cell membrane. Okay. So binding of the hormone and receptor, the first messenger and receptor, hormone receptor complex. They activate the adenyl cyclase. Okay. The formation of cyclic AMP. And cyclic AMP is called as the second messenger. Okay. The second messenger causes the activation of protein kinases. And protein kinases leads to phosphorylation of proteins. And this phosphorylation of protein brings about the function of this, what this coded in the first messenger. What this first messenger wants to act is done by the proteins, phosphorylation. See, phosphorylation brings about changes like membrane permeability to different substances or ions. It causes, this phosphorylation causes change in the membrane permeability. This may allow some of the ions to enter or leave. Okay, so that is membrane permeability, change in membrane permeability, or it activates or inactivates some of enzymes in the cell. It increase or decrease protein synthesis by action on ribosomes, or it regulate the release of hormones from other endocrine glands. Okay, so these are the changes that brought about by the phosphorylation of this protein, phosphorylation of the proteins. Okay, so this mechanism like cyclic AMP mediated hormone activity. So first messenger, the hormone act on the membrane receptor. They activate the adenyl cyclase and formation, activation of the second messenger, the cyclic AMP. This is the second messenger, the cyclic AMP. They causes for a phosphorylation, activated kinases or phosphorylated kinases and phosphorylation of the proteins, and these protein bring about the changes in the permeability of the membrane, in the activation or inactivation of the enzymes, increase or decrease in the protein synthesis by the action on ribosomes, and regulation of protein release of hormones from endocrine glands. This is the mode of action by peptide and protein hormones or water soluble hormones